Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Friday, October 3rd, 2014 at 12 noon on the dot here, Eastern Daylight Time. It's been a few days, but then, I haven't had too terribly much to say. That's going to change. I have a list. I'm not going to cover all that today. I'm going to divide these into topics. And today's topic deals with, which is sort of apposite or appropriate for this time of year, given that a number of people, anymore now in the semester system, they've gone back to, people have gone back to college or university in August. But, when I was a boy, in 1969, Ohio State University's first day of class that year was October 1st, 1969. And people would check into the dorms about 5 days ahead of time. Well, they could check in right up to the last minute as far as they were concerned, but a lot of people showed up between 3 and 5 days ahead of time to, get squared away and that sort of thing. And I lived in one of the older dorms on Ohio State. It was called East Baker Hall, which was part of Baker Hall was a single building, but they had one wing that was called East Baker Hall, and then the rest of it was called just Baker Hall. At that time, they had single-sex dorms, and the women lived in Baker Hall, and then the men lived in East Baker Hall. There were many other dormitories at Ohio State, but this was, going to be, I was going to be in a room with, as it turns out, 2 other guys. Now, most of the rooms, excuse me, most of the rooms in what was called the South Campus area were double rooms. You had, there were some rooms that were singles, very, very, very few, and mostly reserved for upperclassmen and graduate students. And most of, the vast majority of the others were double rooms. But there were occasional triple rooms, 3 people. And in some of the areas of other dorms that were reserved for some of the athletes, they had like 4 to a room. But those were very big rooms. Well, the genesis of this tale is, when my sister was in high school, she was incredibly disciplined. Now, she was 8 years older than me. She was incredibly disciplined. Graduated with a 4.0, which at that time that was as high as you could go. I mean, we didn't have AP classes, advanced placement classes then. And so 4.0 was as high as you could go. That's like a poem, isn't it? And very disciplined, very organized, worked very hard. Was first in her class. And she sort of set the standard for me as far as what then I had to, in other words, I really couldn't do any better than that. So I had to at least equal it. So, which I did. And basically emulating her. And when she went up to Ohio State in 1961, we thought she was going to do just great. Well, she signed up for 20 quarter hours. Now, under the quarter system, that's, I don't know what that would be in terms of semester hours. But under the quarter system, that was a fairly stiff load. You generally didn't want to take but between 15 and 18 quarter hours. And 18's pushing it, you know. Well, she signed up for 20 quarter hours. Now, it wasn't like 4 or 5 hour classes. I think there were like 3 5-hour classes, and then there was a 3-hour class and I don't know. Hell, she might have signed up for 21 quarter hours. Well, she, obviously worked hard, and she ended up with like a 2.2, 2.6. I mean, she was devastated. I mean, she felt just devastated. I remember my dad had football tickets and, season football tickets, and we'd go up there for the games. They'd go to the games. My folks would go to the games, and sometimes they'd take friends of theirs. But I would then stay in the car, and listen to the game on the radio while they were up there. We'd have a picnic and stuff. And I remember my sister walking across the bridge, the old Tangi River Bridge, to to join us for this little picnic lunch ahead of the game. And we were all excited. Oh, how's it going? This, that, and the other. And she sat up there in the front seat between the two of my mother and my dad. And she just squalled. I mean, it wasn't like she was so much homesick as she was just, it was a lot harder than she expected. And then there was the issue of living in the dormitory, which is odd because she'd always, been very active in camping and this and that, and, getting along very well as other people. And, I was active in camping and that sort of thing, with scouts but, in terms of getting along sort of right off the bat with strangers, I wasn't very good at that. I don't know, I might not be all that good now either. But anyway, she was just devastated. And she said, I'm not going to be doing very well. And well, she went on and on like this. And I was, of course, at that point I was 9. And here's my sister. I'd always looked up to her. And just to see her broken like this was a real eye-opener for me. And I said, well, because she hadn't said one good thing about being in college, university. I said, well, what's good about it? And she says, and just threw, hands over her eyes. Said, there's nothing good about it. Well, so when I went up to the university on, late September of 1969 and was going to start class on October 1st, 1969, this little memory was very much in the back of my mind. Well, it wasn't in the back of my mind. It was like, right up front. And I vowed that was not going to happen to me. It was not going to happen to me. And, I only signed up for 16 hours. I wasn't going to do that 21-hour nonsense or 20-hour. I signed for 16 hours, and I got everything squared away and ready to go. There was just one problem. Well, 2 problems, but basically one problem. And that came in the form of a roommate. I won't give you his full name. We'll call him John, who was from Fremont, Ohio. Now, it turned out I was one of these guys that was in a triple room. 1000, let's see, 1001 East Baker Hall, 93 West 12th Avenue. It's a corner room. It sat right over the dormitory director's apartment on the floor beneath. This was actually the second floor of the building, but it was, it was on what was considered the first floor of the dormitory. Kind of like the way British talk about their first floors. And so John was from Fremont, Ohio. That's roommate one. Roommate two was a guy named Ron, and he was from the Cleveland, Ohio area. Roommate Ron and I could have lived together very happily for the 3 or 4 years that I would have been an undergraduate at Ohio State. We would have gotten along very well. We got along very well. We didn't get in each other's way. We weren't rude to each other. Didn't get into each other's spaces as far as personal belongings or that sort of thing. This was not the case with John from Fremont, Ohio. This guy, well, he was one of the most pretentious, filled with oneself individual I have ever met in my life. And I practiced medicine for a living. I'm going to tell you right now, you meet a lot of guys like that in medicine. Yes, you do. But this guy had pretty much every one of these guys beat that I met later on. Now Fremont, Ohio is a very nice north central Ohio town. It's a very, it's sort of a flat part of the state, but it's a good, nice agricultural area. And more of that and not. But Marchand, John would well, first of all, he took the New Yorker magazine, which is fine. New Yorker magazine's a perfectly reasonable magazine if you want. If you like the New Yorker, take the New Yorker. But don't ostentatiously lie on your bed and read and laugh hysterically, at the top of your voice while people are trying to study and do things, and insist on showing all the people, within, living radius, this cartoon or that short story, and don't carry on about the covers, the effing covers. Just grotesque. Plus, he also liked to sit, lay back on his bed and, quasi play this guitar while wailing and moaning some sort of improvised song. Meanwhile, I am trying to study. I'm trying to write English papers. I'm trying to write lab reports. I'm trying to do my Math 151 homework, calculus homework. I'm trying to do things over here, guys, Well, suffice to say he was rude. He then sort of egged on a number of the other guys in the hallway, the unit. It was called One South. It's the dorm had it was like a T-shape. You had what would be considered the top bar that the thing ran north to south, and then the east wing that jutted out was considered part of the south, unit. The unit, one south and one north. Well, we were in one south, and on the east wing, he sort of fell in and got a number of these other guys to come. Basically, what they would do is when I was trying to work at my desk, they'd come in and throw shit at me. Which, okay, you can deflect that, you can sort of deflect that, but, laugh a bit, ha ha ha, that kind of stuff. But when they started squirting water on me and getting it onto my materials and into my typewriter, and that's when I popped. I had a set of wooden bass drumsticks about so long. One of them had the kind of a rounded end. It was essentially it was a small club. That's what it was. Well, I brought these things along with me to school. So when I had enough of that, I popped and I grabbed one of those things. I chased these sons of bitches down the hall. Hollering at the top of my voice about, don't ever do that again. Well, after that, they backed off a bit. Meanwhile, shortly after that, I went down and I had a word with the dorm director about trying to get me a single room, because this just wasn't working out. Well, you gotta stick it out. Single rooms are only for the, this, that, and the other. And I said, look, I said, I can't have these guys coming in here, for all intents and purposes, doing borderline assault and certainly doing property damage. I just can't have that. I said, you've got to do something about that. Well, so then he admitted something. He said, well, the dorm directors made the room assignments. At that time, I don't know what they do now, but at that time they made the room assignments. He says, we get little dossiers on everybody and their background. And he said, I thought it would be, now this guy was a doctoral student in some sort of social science or social work or some sort of, that area of endeavor. And he said, I thought it would be a very interesting experiment. An experiment with me. So much for informed consent. Huh? I thought it would be a very interesting experiment to put you, who came from a, very high achiever, very clearly, disciplined honors program and that sort of thing, and put you in with, Ron who was from Cleveland, who was a nice guy. He tried hard, but he just wasn't doing all that well. I don't think he lasted there but a couple of years at Ohio State. But put you in with this guy, maybe your habits would rub off on him or something, or you could help him. Or says, and then John, I included him because, he'd had a lot of bad behavioral reports in high school. He said, I thought maybe you could calm him down, settle him down. Well, it didn't work, did it? This guy's a real piece of work. It was interesting, so, obviously I had my moment when I went home or met my folks up there for a football game or something. my dad said, how's it going? And I said, well, and I said, well, there's this one roommate that, the one guy's okay, and the other guy is, I said, he's from Fremont, Ohio. He says, you don't need to say anything more. Now, this is not intended to slur against the present residents of Fremont, Ohio, because I don't know any. But I can give you a little, I can give you some of my past experience with those folks from Fremont, Ohio. First of all, when I was in high school debate, I'd meet a lot of these guys on the debate circuit. And the ones I met from Fremont were uniformly the most a-holy people I've ever met, well, until I got into the practice of medicine. Well, some of them, though, they gave them a good run. And when I went to Boys State, which is a program run by the American Legion and for guys after their junior year in high school, I met some guys from Fremont. Oh, whoa, wow. And then, interestingly, when my dad worked for the Conservation Service here in Ohio, when I was a kid, and there was a couple of summers I went all over the state with him when he would visit farms and things. And he said, when he says, I didn't have to say anything more after I told him this guy came from Fremont, he says, most people in the ag community and ag towns, small farm farm town area towns. He said, nice. But boy, those people from Fremont were just, you didn't know what you'd walked into when you went up there. Well, that's a major stereotype for the day, isn't it? Anyway, how this ultimately played out was, I indeed did get my single room, as a second quarter freshman, which is very, very, very unusual. 3018 East Baker Hall on 3 South. And there I remained very happily till I started medical school in July of 1972. But boy, that first quarter was just a bastard as far as living arrangements were concerned. Excuse me. So, yes, that was indeed a nirvana. I have nirvana of single room, and it was. So, on that note, I'm going to say bye-bye, YouTubers.